Andy Bow!
I suppose it's one of the richest coalfields in the country. The tunnel he cut through was, I think, about 368 yards long. It must have been quite an undertaking which would require quite a lot of capital.
Coal has fuelled the growth and prosperity of the Biddulph Valley for well over 200 years, and busy coal yards such as this were once as common as the corner shop. A seemingly insatiable demand led to the construction of many canals, railways and tramways that changed the landscape forever. This film uncovers one of the once abundant smaller tramways that has a justifiable claim to be of exceptional construction. But first, a look at the area and some of the men responsible for its development.
Robert Heath came into the Biddulph Valley in 1857. He then immediately started creating his Biddulph Valley Coal and Iron Works. When he came in 1887, the Childerplay colliery that belonged to James Bateman was drawing 18,000 tonnes a year. In 1864, it was drawing 180,000 tonnes a year. Up until the Macclesfield Canal was constructed in 1831, the only way of handling the coal in the Biddulph Valley was the small tramways that were created, and of necessity the outputs in this area were not very great. But it was really when, first of all, James Bateman came here in 1810, and his son created the Grange Gardens that you'll probably know of, and then more so in 1857 when Robert Heath came here and began to develop the area, seriously develop the area into coal mining and ironworking. It had many small mines before Robert Heath came here, but of course they were all of necessity small because they had no transport system which would carry any amount of coal. And these included the collieries that you're interested in, Stonetrough and Towerhill. These were owned by the Williamson family. There were two brothers, Williamson, that really were connected through to James Brindley. His surveyor was Hugh Henschel, and he married Hugh Henschel's daughter. And when James Brindley died, Anne Brindley married Robert Williamson, and she had two sons, Hugh Henschel Williamson and another Robert Williamson, and these are the people that we're talking about. The Robert Williamson who leased in 1832 Towerhill and Stonetrough and Towerhill and constructed the tramway.
He brought all the coal up at the most northerly shaft, which was Towerhill, and then he brought it along from Towerhill through the tunnel, which he drove specifically for this purpose, linked up with the brake, came down the brake, along brake level, crossed over the road at top of Springbank by the chapel, then down the fields behind Springbank onto the wharf. There was no railway, and they delivered straight into the boats.
And of course there'd be no railway there then, and it was put on barges and it'd go to Manchester or to the ship canal for ships. And when I was a kid, where I learnt to swim was in the canal. I forget the bridge number, and all the kids at that time learnt to swim in the canal. And it was 1960 because it was the Rome Olympics.
Yes.
And the place near to Asprey Sidings, and everybody called it Stony Bottom. Everywhere else was silt and mud, but there for some reason, I've no idea, but it was all coal. It was 2-inch coal.
Oh, I see. It was spillage.
And it was all spillage.
There was more or less a constant gradient from Stonetrough Colliery up towards Towerhill, and then a fairly even gradient from there, a lesser gradient. It was from about 1 in 25 from Stonetrough to Towerhill, and then a gradient, probably an average gradient between Towerhill and the tunnel entrance of 1 in 57, 1 in 60, and then passing through the tunnel onto the top of the brow. The brow then dips down at about 1 in 7, 1 in 8. He had to use a brake incline to lower the wagons down to the canal, and this was a very efficient way and of not requiring a great deal of power, really, because as he'd got to take the coal down to the canal, the loaded wagons were heavier than the empty wagons that he brought up.
What do you know about the brake incline?
Well, going by old gentleman, my mother's uncle, who was 88 when he died in 1968, said that it'd be like a jig dip down the pit with a big wheel at the top and one at the bottom, and there'd be a brake band on which was operated manually. And there's a saying all round here, all the old North Staffordshire road slang, they all say take your time, how they pow.
Yes.
And this, believably, is supposed to come from this. There'd be men situated down different parts down the brake, and if they had one off, or it was going too quick, he'd go, "How the bow!" and he'd start pulling back on the brake band and braking it.
At the bottom end, there was this toll gate, because Williamson got to recover his money some way or the other, hadn't he? So he charged the toll, and I think for a person, I think it was a penny.
So people rode on it, did they?
Oh, people could go up it, but if they went up it, they'd have to pay a penny.
Yeah. They'd just sit in the wagon, would they?
Well, they wouldn't see the element of danger, would they, in them days? Now, just a bit farther across, up at Mow Cop here, there was another company called Mow Cop Brick and Canister Company. Have you heard of that? And what happened with them, they used to put it on the boats, you see, and they had to pay a levy to use that mineral line. My grandfather was given a job of pony driving from Towerhill to top of the brake. How long my grandfather drove the ponies up there, I don't know, but it was quite a considerable time.
They were quite big horses, weren't they?
Yeah, they were like Clydesdales, more or less. They'd have to be, wouldn't they?
I was told well, Cyril Broods, who lives at the top of the road, his grandfather or great-grandfather was a wagon master, and they used to bring them from Stonetrough across the fields towed by horse.
Yeah.
And through the tunnel, and I think it was Charlie Machin said they used to go down 6 at a time. And the old fella said like there were 6 on, and the horses would do the same as the pit ponies. He'd take the strain, he'd go clink, 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 and he'd count the couplings, this tightening up.
I see.
And if he got 7 on, he wouldn't go.
Yes. So
He'd only take 6.
know. Yeah.
The old tramway that already existed there was very, very primitive and, you know, sort of old and would be inefficient. So he started away, and he took the shortest route that was possible to, you know, get his coal down to the Macclesfield Canal, which entailed cutting through the spur of Mow Cop, which is a ridge of millstone grit, where the old millstones had been made for hundreds of years, which is very, very hard rock. And the tunnel he cut through was, I think, about 368 yards long.
For a number of years, my mother and father were caretakers at the Wesleyan Chapel, and we lived in the chapel house. That was from 1958 up to 68. And I remember I was small, and there was little old ladies there, and my teacher, who was at the school, Anna Hasty, and she was 90 when she died donkeys years ago, and she taught my mother. And she reckoned that as they could hear when they were wagoning the trucks through, when they were in the chapel in the Sunday school, because in them days that's what was the school.
Yes.
Where the kids were taught, and they could hear the wagons going underneath.
the work as they did in these tunnels and the bricking was fantastic, and they did it with an egg shape.
Yeah.
With the top of the egg shape inverted, top to bottom. That was for pressure.
Yeah.
And they're still as good today as what they were then.
What have you found here then?
Well, once we'd done in the tunnel, we decided to try to locate some of the old stone blocks that the original tramway ran on. And as you can see, we've got quite a good displacement here of blocks. Some of this tramway obviously was Sendle, but at other points it had to be rows of 3, so that the rope going down on the downward travelling wagons didn't foul the ones coming up, and that's what we've got here. Also, it looks like the size of the rail was approaching a modern section edge rail. These appear to have been about 15 feet long, and we can judge that from the difference in the stone blocks, because every fifth block had a chair on where the rails actually join, and that gives us 15 feet.
Where was the brake wheel situated, Len?
The brake wheel appears to have been about halfway in the cutting. That seems to have consisted of a drum set up quite high off the ground, but just what type of system they used at this stage we're not sure.
The tunnel itself had been lost for many years, but has recently been relocated and a way-in excavated by a team led by mines historian Len Kirkham. Len kindly agreed to show John Anderson, the local museum curator, and myself round the present-day remains. With some trepidation, we approached along the now much overgrown cutting of the old tramway.
You can't get them off. You put a little pack of gel under each one just to gel these gel.
I imagine there'd be slightly more to dig out than this when you started.
There was rather, it's 7'6" deep, and
Yeah.
they dug it out right to the floor.
Must have been a good precaution.
I think it was the beginnings of the Channel Tunnel.
Okay.
I didn't realise there was plenty of the fire
Has that never really occurred to me before now?
Yeah.
Okay, what's that for then, Len?
This is my depth gauge, rudimentary depth gauge. You want to see what the fall is on the level from here up to the incline.
Oh right, so we're not going to go over the depth, are we?
You should be okay.
So what the average depth of water we're going to be going into is about, what, 2 to 3?
Yeah, at the very most 2'6", I would say. Right. At this point it's about a foot. It's lined pretty well all through. And the lining is as good really as the day it was put in, 180 years ago.
Yes. Well, certainly
apart from one,
in good condition, the
it is, yes. You can see the weep holes to drain the starter at the back of the lining. They go right through to the rock, I think.
Fairly rough underfoot.
Yes, there are bricks and pieces of stone and so on that you have to be careful not to fall over. See what I mean?
Would it be higher than this when you found the thing, the actual level of the water?
The level of the water was almost up to the roof at that end, at the deep end, and you can just see the tide mark here, the water line. In fact, it fluctuated somewhat. It has been up to there.
Yes.
Pretty well full up.
Just dug that channel out to drain the water then?
Sorry?
Dug the channel out to drain?
Yeah, we dug the complete entrance out, really.
Right.
I'm
nearly snapped like they are.
Yes, those are quite tricky. It's,
Are they?
it's some type of calcium deposit, similar no doubt to stalactite. The curious thing is that they seem to form underwater as well.
There's a changing level here.
There is indeed. I'm not sure why that is, John. There's also a gap in where you can see the original strata, which is quite curious.
What's happening here then, man? It's a bit different.
Right, well that's the end of the stone lining, because we're in the Sally Rock, and with the massive beds.
This is gritstone, will it?
This is gritstone, yes.
Right.
I think it's the Chatsworth grit, on the geological series.
Yes.
And here you've got a thin seam of coal,
All right.
about 3 inches,
Yeah?
that we think correlates with the old Halcombe Brook seam.
It wouldn't have been part of the original field that they were mining around here,
No,
would it?
it wasn't.
No.
The other point of interest is that it looks like the black staining, which meets the demarcation here of the gritstone, may have had something to do with the coal dust that must have blown through this town like a hurricane at times.
Off the wagons.
Off the wagons as they came through, yes.
Right.
Seems to be evidence to suggest that the way the lining was done, they had 3 teams of men, one each side building a low wall, like so,
Yeah.
and another following on the back with the former that sat on this wall and completed the arching. By doing it that way, you would have.
Are these special bricks then, or just ordinary
That you
building
don't
bricks?
know.
No, not engineering bricks
No,
particularly.
they don't seem to be. They're not certainly not blue engineering bricks,
Right.
Silica bricks.
Right.
The black stuff appears to be iron staining out of this bedding plane. It's coming down. It takes various forms. One is black, and it's more evident in the ochre farther up the tunnel.
Right.
There's a nice example here of the shot hole, because this was driven in the late 1820s with black powder.
Black powder?
Black powder, yes, and straw fuses.
Yes.
There's one there, and there's a good one here.
That's a good big shot hole, that, isn't it?
They're rather large for that period,
Yes, yes.
of around 1830, they're quite large. We've got an almost complete shot hole here, with the clay stemming to stop the gunpowder blowing the hole out. It's just pushed up the rock this way.
Looks a bit
Part of the
dodgy,
line
isn't it?
here, it's come down because there's not a lot in the way of integrity in the strata. Reason being, it was bound to fire clay,
Yes.
very friable, hard clay, and began to space it to expand and separate, and it's brought in a little bit of the lining, but not much because most of this wasn't actually crowned.
It wasn't.
No, there's no evidence of it.
It looks very colourful, but not too safe.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
We better move
I
on.
think rather
That
not
bit
to...
is coming, but the rest of it is,
Yes.
it's quite safe apart from where John is.
Oh, right, but on the floor there, it's evidence of the fact it has actually
Yes, it has indeed. The big scab has come off here.
big scab.
That big hole there.
All right.
Yes.
Interesting then, but I think I feel safer if we moved on a bit out of the way of the collapse.
There is one thing, we've got tiny things of soil in this window.
Oh, look at that then.
This is
brilliant,
quite a
isn't it?
nice portion of the mine, isn't it?
Absolutely staggering. We'd paid to see that in the showcase,
Iron
yes.
stone leaching, yes. This is limonite.
All right.
Very high percentage of iron.
It's limonite.
That's limonite, yeah.
Right, so you get quite a selection of minerals under here then.
You
as
do
well.
indeed, yes. Another example of iron staining again here that's starting to solidify.
Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it?
It's really nature's way of claiming old tunnels. It will set solid eventually.
Yes. Well, it looks like shellac, doesn't it?
does
It looks a
indeed,
bit
yeah.
varnished on top of the mud.
Because it's set underwater, presumably. This is unusual. It seems to be a turning circle. Judging by the slope on the tunnel, from here to the staff side was downhill.
Right.
So they were dragged in uphill to this point by horse, which is 2/3 of the way approximately. The horses were taken off and this used as a turning circle, and then the coal tubs pushed out to the entrance by hand using the gravity advantage. That seems to be.
Oh right, so we're at almost the crest of a hill here.
Yes. It's lucky that we found these two rails because it demonstrates the engineering methods used in laying the rails in the tunnel, which was slightly unconventional.
So these are sleepers then? From
These are the sleepers, yes.
Right.
But they didn't lay one sleeper at right angles to the rails. They used two, spread in from the side to the sleeper, thus.
Yes.
And this had...
The rail will be running that way?
That's right, that's
Yes.
where the chair's been.
Right.
It did two things. It stopped the rails spreading because these were very heavy carts, and also it left the centre open for the horses.
Oh, I see.
That's my theory
Oh,
anyway.
brilliant, yes.
Right, this is about as far as we go, Dave.
All right. Looks a bit loose, doesn't it?
After all these years, the integrity of the lining is suspect. Some of the bricks are beginning to erode, but this is about the only bad spot in the whole tunnel.
And we're underneath the road.
Not quite. It gets a bit worse. But apart from that, it's in pretty good condition throughout, as you can see.
The tunnel continues, roughly following a line from beneath the square Wesleyan Chapel, now a museum, to the now blocked eastern portal. But there may have been a major blockage somewhere in this area.
There's a photograph from the Cheshire View of 3 of Warburton's steam wagons laden with stone going round the chapel bank at Mow Cop Road, turning there right over the tunnel, and it was about 6 foot down and it went in.
So that wagon must have gone through somewhere here, mustn't it?
It could have gone through the road there.
Yeah, no, we think it went through there.
Well, it went
'Cause
down.
we've been underground to there.
Yeah,
We've been under this road
yeah.
and up to there, and that's where it's blocked.
To locate the exact position of the end of the accessible tunnel, we enlisted the help of modern science and called in an expert in underground radio location techniques. He quickly established that the furthest point we reached underground was indeed the point at which the heavy lorry had been almost swallowed up. This means that practically the entire length of the tunnel has survived intact and will remain for many years as an unseen testimony to man's ingenuity and enterprise.